Hey, I'm Western Jaguar. And if you make music nowadays, you probably know TikTok. Love it or hate it, music marketing people are always talking about getting on TikTok and getting your music out there via TikTok. Personally, I haven't used TikTok a ton. I have posted, it's usually no more than 15 to 25 videos that I just throw out there because I feel like I need to have something on TikTok. That's why I had this idea, because I've never really promoted hard on TikTok. And I wondered, if I did promote my songs on TikTok more, would I end up with more plays, more streams, more saves? So that brings us to the experiment. I'm dropping a new song called Slow Death.
Reaching for a higher ground.
It's going to be out on Spotify tomorrow. And my goal is to make 100 TikTok videos using the song over the next month. This will increase my TikTok videos by 400%. And I want to see how many plays this turns into, what the stats look like. Aside from that, I'll also be tracking my TikTok data just to compare the prior 28 days to the 28 days or the 4 weeks that I'm going to post 100 videos, just to see if any of this actually turns into something. But before we get into it, we have to know what's the baseline. So here's my data for the last 28 days on TikTok. And as you can see, it's nothing too exciting. I don't post a whole bunch. It's just basic stuff. And we're going to compare the next 28 days to this at the end of the video. I should say that the baseline we're going to use for what is my normal amount of streams without TikTok, I'm just going to take my last 5 releases on Spotify and their first month total. So here's the 5 songs that I've released recently on Spotify with their first month play totals. And when you average it out, here's what you get. So that's going to be our baseline number that we're going to say that's our average, and we're going to compare the highs and the lows. And the reason we're going to be looking at Spotify plays specifically is because in TikTok, when you go to a sound that's been used in a video, you have the option to add to Spotify, and then makes it easier to get into your library compared to places like Apple Music, Bandcamp, things like that. So that's why we're using Spotify to compare the numbers. But with all that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to start posting these videos and I'll see you in a month. So it's been a month, and let me tell you, the results of this were interesting to say the least. So first off, I did not hit 100 TikToks this month. I ended up posting 76. I still think that's a good enough number to see how TikTok impacts my streams. So first, we're going to start with the TikTok stats. And as you can imagine, they're very improved because that's where we're doing all this posting. So in the key metrics here, my video views obviously up 255%, profile views, likes, comments, shares, everything's up as you would expect because I've been posting every day. The most interesting thing for me is probably that share number. Now only 14 shares. The reason the 14 shares is interesting is because out of 76 TikToks, only 14 times it got shared. Shares, I think, are really people liking the sound, sharing it to somebody else, getting them to listen as well, passing that chain on. That number being low, I think indicates that there wasn't a ton of that going on. It's either people saw the video and maybe went and listened, but they weren't really sharing it. So maybe something to think about going forward is something to encourage people to share it with a friend. But again, what we were measuring was not the TikTok data, it was streams. So let's open my Spotify data and take a look. So here is the data for Slow Death. You can see we had 1,062 streams, 360 listeners, 2.95 streams per listener, 103 playlist ads, and 102 saves. So if you remember from the first half of this video, our goal was 1,106 plays. We're pretty much in the ballpark, but definitely no big increase from doing this. In fact, the stream number is down a little bit from my average for the year for a release. But I do have some theories about that in a second. So if we take that information and compare it to the last single I released, this one was a very average release. So 1,106 streams. The listeners are way higher. So 615 listeners, and I'll explain that in a second. 1.8 streams per listener. Playlist ads are about the same. Saves are much higher on, which again, I think goes into this next piece of data. So what I really wanted to look at for these plays, because numbers don't tell everything, is the source of the streams. And the numbers here for Slow Death are interesting. 45% of those 1,062 plays came from the profile and catalog page, my page on Spotify. Whereas if you look at my average overall source of streams, you can see that only 12% of my last 12 month streams have come from my artist profile and catalog. So I think that does show that more people were searching up and finding this on their own, even if there's less other things going on. You'll also notice that for Spotify algorithmic playlists on Slow Death, we're at 28%, whereas on my Spotify overall for the last 12 months, 73% of my plays have come from like different types of editorial Spotify features. In fact, if you look at Hornets, which was the song we compared it to, that song was at 32% Spotify algorithmic playlists, compared to the 28% for Slow Death. So it kind of tells me, and the listeners now make sense, is that this song didn't get pushed through the Spotify algorithm as much. I don't know why that was the case. I have a theory, and that's because the title of the song is Slow Death, and things like death. I noticed this specifically on Instagram Reels and some of my TikToks. They would barely get any views if I didn't censor the word death. And I think this might have been a bad song to try this with because of that. I think that affected the Spotify algorithmic reach of this. If it were to have gotten the same push from the Spotify algorithm as some of my other songs, I have no doubt it would be around 15 to 1600 streams. In terms of what worked and what didn't work on my TikTok for my posts, things that I found were most effective were longer text posts, such as this one, where I just kind of said, look, I'm a 30-year-old guy making music. Can you help me out? I also had one post where I took a clip from the new Skate game, said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this song was on the soundtrack? And that got a decent amount of views in terms of my perspective. But throughout the whole 76 views, I had nothing get more than 350 views. I even had some things go as low as like 44 views. Nothing really broke out. But I also think at the same time, going back to the TikTok data, the song got in front of 15,000 eyeballs, 15,000 ears, even if it was only for 1 second. And there is some value to that. Throwing it out there, I don't really know where it's going, but maybe it does find some people. And I did have some people comment, yo, this is a great song, this is fire. And then they repeatedly like my videos. So I know that the algorithm is showing it to them more and more. And hopefully that turns into future listens, future email subscribers, future people who are going to be committed to following this project. But I did really find the less I thought about a video, the better it seemed to do. The more production I put into it, never really turned out in terms of views. In fact, those videos ended up getting less views a lot of the times, in the hundreds. Whereas the quick ones I did without thinking too much about it ended up getting those 300 views, 30 plus likes on them. So did posting really do anything for my music project? I would say no. I didn't really see a major change. Will I continue to post on TikTok? I will. I will not do it as frequently as I have. Maybe if you want to see me try this again with a different song, or if you have some ideas for how I could use TikTok to try to promote music in a different way, make sure you leave them in the comments below. I read every comment. I reply to every comment. I hope this was helpful in some way or another. My name is Western Jaguar. I make indie rock, shoegaze, indie pop music. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.